The seat, we'll get started. I believe in starting on time and ending on time. Please.
Dr. Thrasher.
Here.
Ms. Byrne.
Here.
Representative Lee. Representative Gray. Representative Ingram. Mr. White. Ms. Chatham. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Ms. Davis. Ms. Harris. Dr. Hicks.
Here.
Ms. Shufflebarger. Mr. Varner. Dr. Jones.
Present.
Dr. Anderson. Dr. Powers. Quorum is present.
Thank you, Adam. First of all, on behalf of Speaker Ledbetter, I talked to him Monday and want to thank all y'all on this committee for doing yeoman's work. He said he's never seen a committee that did more work in a least amount of time. Why are we here? We're not talking about saving the Snell daughter. We're not talking about pronouns. We're talking about real people here. If we fail, there's going to be dire consequences. People will die. That's what I doubt. Probably 15% of our rural grocery stores will either be out of business or severely impacted. More people will go on Medicaid. There'll be more crime. And overall, it's not going to be good. We've already seen what Walmart has done to the small businesses. We've seen what CVS has done to the mom and pop drugstores. 79% of all doctors in Alabama are owned by corporate America now. Think about that. Farmers are pretty much being squeezed out by corporate farming groups. So overall, the heart of America, what started this great country, is being eroded. We can't let that happen with our rural grocery stores. Now, Brandon and Commissioner Buckner have done a really good job. I came in here not knowing anything about what they were doing. I've looked at this pretty hard, and they are the solution, and they are not the problem. I tell you that. Alabama's been the best in the South in the last 3 years in error rate. We'll talk about error, what error means in a minute. That's really a bad term. Tennessee has been, I think, living under a rock for the last couple of years, along with Mississippi. They woke up this week and discovered, oh my God, we got a problem in Tennessee. Well, duh, yeah, you do. Mississippi's even worse shape than we are. Fraud. First of all, let me say, I equate Minnesota as a poster child of fraud, okay? I want every one of those people to be put in jail and never see the light of day. We're not talking about that in Alabama. We got 1 or 2%, probably maximum, of our total benefits that we can attribute to fraud. Now, it's surprising Jefferson County is the worst, okay? They had a $10.7 million stolen benefits case, and that's been prosecuted now. Most of that was card theft and skimming, and Nancy addressed that last time. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Leader Lee, I will encourage the legislature to look at increasing jail times for big time fraud. I call it Minnesota fraud. I'm not talking about somebody puts the wrong application, something on their form, but where there's obviously Minnesota type fraud, put them in jail and don't let them see the daylight again. We have 750,000 recipients, I believe, Nancy, and about $140 million goes out each month, okay? I think Brandon said there were 19 cases that were ineligible at 6,394 in benefits. That's a small number when you're talking about $140 million a month. Most errors are from eligibility and reporting mistakes. Now, these aren't your Auburn-educated folks. Okay, these folks are poor. They've not had the best education in the world, and they simply are going to make some mistakes. Some of them don't know how to change a PIN number. We'll get that in a minute. So a lot of this is not intentional. We think that the beneficiaries are a small to almost negligible part of the fraud program. Like I said, Alabama has been the best in the South for the last 3 years. There were 26,000 claims and $10 million from skimming and chips. Like I said, we need to educate the people to learn how to change the PIN. My mother, bless her heart, she could use a cell phone. So I'm sure a lot of these people don't know how to change their PIN number, but we'll still have to do better at trying to educate these recipients to protect their benefits, because when they get skimmed, they're the ones that don't eat that month, okay? Because somebody else in another country or another state is already taking it. One thing I believe that Nancy can expand on this is that they're cutting down on the ability to get people that live out of state to cash in these benefits. She'll talk to you in a minute about the chips and what we're doing to do that. So Alabama pays $1.8 billion a year, so $16 million. $16 million is a lot of money. I think it's like Dirksen said, $1 million here, $1 million there. Pretty soon you come out real money. It's real money, but in the scheme of things, $16 million out of $1.8 billion is not. It's bad, but it's not Minnesota. Let's just say that. I'm gonna stop there, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over all our dignitaries here, but we got Paul Lee. He's the leader of the House. We got Jeff Sarles. I call him the czar, healthcare czar, and we got some others, including the public, watching us by video. And the press is here, and we welcome the press to be here, because this is a big deal. 98% of Alabama do not know what SNAP is. Like food stamps, yeah, they know what food stamps are, but they don't really know what problem we're facing, okay? Now, they will in the next, when the legislature gets back in session, this is going to be all over the press. And while we've done a good job, like my old friend Emmy Farmer said, there's dust on that trophy. What are you doing for me today? We've got to come back and give the legislature some hard solutions best we can. Our other solution is get a 2-year waiver federally. I've talked to Senator Tuberville and Britt's office. The governor is on board 100%. We have to get that done. It's going to happen pretty quick with the Farm Bill being discussed right now. But short of that, what we want to do today is not rehash what we did a month ago when y'all talked to us about what impact it's going to be to seniors, what impact it's going to be to children, what impact it's going to be to small business, but give us some solutions that we can give Paul and Jeff that they can take back to the legislature to try to do our best to improve our situation. I'm going to stop at that. Nancy, before I call on Nancy, Carolyn, do you want to say a word?
No, I just want to welcome everybody and just thank the committee. They've done a tremendous amount of work, and thank everybody for being here.
Okay. With that, Nancy, I'll call Leader Lee charged you with giving us 4 things that they can do when we come back. So the floor is all yours, Nancy.
Thank you, and thank you for having us today, and thank you for all of your concern, because this is of great concern. I want to say 2 things. We've actually got 5 things on our chart, even though Representative Lee asked for 4, but it's food for thought, because every time I read something that some senator has said outside Alabama, it's usually incorrect, and it tells me that they still don't understand it. They just don't get it. And so I want you to think about something as we're going through this today. First of all, this has nothing to do with expansion. So when the state got divided on whether or not to expand Medicaid, that had to do with giving people something they don't already have. This state has never taken away, which is what this SNAP issue is, if we don't find the funding or they don't change something, will be taking away from thousands of people and their children what they have had and been used to, and the elderly too. There's about 100,000 elderly that are head of households. So this is something that we have never seen before, we've never experienced before. So I want you to think about that as we go through this. People ask for additional money all the time. You're pulled in different directions. But this is additional funding, or else changes the 2-year thing, just to be able to keep it going for something people have had for 20-plus years. And before that, they got commodities. So we've always helped the underserved with food in some way, as far back as I can remember, and even before my time too. So I want you to remember that. I also want you to remember error rates does not equate to fraud. And back when all of this first started, it was all about fraud. Well, the fraud that was going on had to do with all that was done through the computer system. And as I've told y'all before, I'm kind of technologically challenged. So I do email and text, and that's pretty much it. But it was a very elaborate system. There was a press article just recently where a lady that was working for FNS, Food and Nutrition Service, which is now FNA, was charged with, I think she got 2 or 3 years. They proved $60-something million that she was in on what she did. She helped certify machines in New York. And that's how we kept seeing Alabama expenditures being handled through New York. We knew we didn't have that many clients going up there. But she got 2 years, and I think ordered to pay back $34 million. Brendan, I think it was 2, wasn't it? And so I don't know if she turned state's evidence or what. But that was the big fraud that was going on. That doesn't have anything to do with our error rate, though. And most of our error rates have nothing to do with fraud. Maybe 1% might have something to do with fraud, but we've gone back and looked the last 2 years, and they don't really have to do with fraud. But when you read it out there, why somebody's for it or going to vote for it, that has a vote, it generally they don't throw fraud in there. I saw one last week from a senator, I forgot where he was from. It was all about fraud. And this doesn't have anything to do with fraud, not in Alabama anyway, and I don't think it does in most states. So I want you to remember that, and also remember Dr. Thrasher just talked about the economic impacts and somewhat about the health. But the economic impacts are going to be huge, and the health care is going to be huge. And I think the number of cases in the court system is going to go up too, because people are going to eat. If they have to steal the food to feed their children, they're going to steal it. I mean, that's just a basic need that we have. So the state's going to have to deal with a lot of things that we're not used to. Because like I say, when you start taking away $1.8 billion out of the economy too, that's huge for a state. And at this time, Brandon is going to talk about the things on the slide, and feel free to, if you want to ask questions as we go along, ask questions, please. Because we want everybody to understand, because that's part of the problem around the country. People don't understand what this does. They don't understand how this works. And it's very, very complicated. It's not like working on 2-problem math on a math test with 2 problems. It's not like that. It goes in lots of curves and things, and it's just a totally different world when you get into food assistance, quality assurance, quality control. So, Raymond, let's do the slides now.
Oh, it wasn't even on. Okay. Well, I want to talk, and this is the first bullet point, Dr. Thrasher, and this is the one that we've been talking about in most of our committees, is just legislation to delay the implementation of the payment area cost share to at least FY30, and give the ability for Alabama policies and procedures to catch up that we've changed over the last several months to be able to catch up, and give us the same opportunities that states like Florida and Georgia have. And I know that there's going to be a lot of conversation about that topic today, but Commissioner, this is really important. When this legislation passed, FY25 only had 3 months left in it, and there was only 3 months left to FY26, and those are the 2 years that we can use for our payment area cost share. And change.
Excuse me, for FY28. is based on one of those 2 years, period. That's just the way it's written.
And changing a program the size of ours on a dime is very difficult. But we've made a lot of changes, and the workers in the counties are working through those changes. And we have seen some significant improvement in those areas, but it will take time. I think this is the one that I put on the list that I think that we also need to talk about is that we should not penalize a state for finding errors that a client makes. I think we're going to get into some muddy water across the country where folks will overlook client errors. And that has happened in our tenure where states have overlooked other errors and not counted those errors, and F&S on the back end caught them by overlooking those errors. So I think a state should only count the payment error cost share with what is made by the agency, what we call agency errors.
I just want to mention one thing, because Brandon and I have been around for a long time. They used to give incentive payments to states if you had like one of the top 3 rates, error rates, the lowest error rates. Alabama used to get some of those incentives, but they found out states were cheating. So if you don't count the errors and you bump your rate down lower, then they were trying to get an incentive. So then the feds cut that out. That's what he's talking about. They used to do it, and now they don't because states found ways to cheat on it. There's states probably working on how you can manipulate this and not be totally honest to get your error rate low enough so the feds will pay for your benefits too. But it's a game, and there's lots of consultants out there to help you with it too. So go ahead, Brandon.
But ultimately, it will be caught on the back end and actually be more detrimental to the state if it's caught by the Food and Nutrition Service on the back end. We have a couple of quality control measures, and I think, Dr. Thrasher, you were very interested in some of this last committee meeting when we talked about how squirrely sometimes that quality control can be, and how it's not your typical just kind of look at things from the perspective of what's going on in a case, but they actually can, what I call Monday morning quarterback the case. They can look at the case after the fact and see all the things that our worker did not have at the certification, and pretty much be able to kind of cherry pick things that are wrong with the case that we didn't have at certification. So ultimately, we have 3 things. We would like quality control to review the same information the agency has at certification. So if that worker that's at that interview with that client has what they have that's available to the agency and awards that case, the state should not be penalized because down the line something else changed in that case during that certification that made it an error. They should look at only what we have and grade it on what we had at certification and if we did it correctly. Quality control, not to review information in cases from the prior fiscal year. Talked about this one, and y'all's eyes kind of looked at me kind of weird last time, but this is a situation where we get a case pulled as an active case. They're actually looking back in some situations over a year ago at what happened at the certification, which is in the prior fiscal year. So if we change policy, let's just say we changed policy in January, and that case was pulled for January, and it was certified last January, in some situations, they're going to look at that certification from over a year ago. So our policies and procedures that we changed during this fiscal year would not be reflective in that case. Does that make sense? Okay. And this is the one the Commissioner and I have been talking about for my 13 years, and as long as she's been Commissioner, is quality control to utilize any state-approved policies or waivers. So if we go and we get a waiver or if we get a policy option, quality control actually reviews based on the federal regs, not on any waivers or policy options that we actually chose. So what we have done over the last 6 months has revamped all of our policies to match exactly with the federal regs so that when the case is pulled, it would actually match up. But it's not very fair to states that got those waivers that are federally approved to and policy options to be graded on another set of rules that are out there. And those policy options allow states to administer the program a little bit more efficiently and cost less staff time and also affect our timeliness. I talked a little bit about timeliness. Timeliness was what was the big thing for as long as I've been with SNAP. And the federal level and even at the state level, timeliness was the measure that everybody was looking at. Well, now it's switched over to payment error. So now we're taking all the things that we did to make our timeliness rates great, which we finished, second or third in the nation last year on timeliness. We're taking those things, taking those policies and procedures and now turning them into what is actually in the regs, and those policy options are going away, which is going to eventually affect our timeliness rates in the state, but it will eventually help our payment error rate. So, and the last one for the bullet points, for the 4 bullet points that we want to talk about, and this is a last ditch effort. This is if everything else doesn't kind of pan out. Is legislation to allow the states to reduce the Thrifty Food Plan by the cost share. So if our penalty is 10%, instead of the state having to come up with the 10%, that they reduce our Thrifty Food Plan that goes out to the client by 10%. So, for instance, if the client is due $1,000 by the federal Thrifty Food Plan, that they would only get $900 because they would take the 10% off the top. And that's another way of potentially saving the program and allowing states to continue to operate while we kind of manage the payment error rate. It will affect the state, and you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars that would not be in the state, into the state grocery stores and for their clients. But this is the last measure that we kind of want to talk about because it ultimately would be the last-ditch effort that we would try as a department to be able to save the program.
That does reduce the amount of food assistance someone's getting. So that's our least favorite thing to do. But as Brandon was saying, that would save the program. We don't know if they would give a waiver on it or if it's written in the code somewhere. I think the Thrifty Food Plan is in the code, so it would take legislation to actually change that. You agree with that, Brenda?
I do.
So that would be a difficult thing to do. Of course, the extension on the Big Beautiful bill is also going to take some legislation, but they add things to various bills.
I do like everybody having skin in the game. I like that a lot.
When you said take legislation, state legislation or federal?
Federal.
Okay.
And honestly, most of the stuff is federal. I mean,
Go ahead.
okay, I'm going to stop right there on the bullet points and see if there's any questions on the bullet points or if the commissioner wants to talk about these 4 bullet points before we move over to talking about fraud a little bit.
Turn it over to the legislative folks here. Paul, Jeff, y'all have any questions of this?
Okay.
I do. The legislation you're talking about, that can be handled through an amendment on the Farm Bill right now. Is that not right?
Yes, but they do add things to other bills sometimes too. So,
Okay.
Yes, the Farm Bill has not been voted on yet. So
Okay,
I think it's still in committee. Last time we checked, it was.
Right, and they've added over the last several years. It's been commonplace to add it to appropriation bills too, policy changes.
And the letter that we've talked about, that's some of the request is that it be done through an amendment on the Farm Bill and not new. It's a lot easier to amend something than it is to legislate something is where I'm getting at.
Yeah, amendment is a better word. Yes.
Okay.
That's a great idea. I know time is short for this Farm Bill right now. They're actually meeting, I think, as we speak on this thing. So afterwards, let's get together and talk to our people in Washington and see if we can't get that in there, Jeff.
And I think it's important, the fraud part that we put in here. Matter of fact, I was talking to one of our congressional officers last Friday, and I was asking about this. They were calling me for something else, and I was just giving some examples of things that if people are concerned about fraud, because like I say, when you read people that are saying, well, I'm going to vote for the Farm Bill, they usually will throw in fraud somewhere. And I said, if you really look at the fraud, that really does not equate to error rate usually. But there's things that could be changed. And the person I was talking to was just amazed. For example, the first one on there, we're recommending only 2 authorized representatives per case. Right now, a case, like if Nancy Buckner had a food assistance case, I could have everybody in this room be my authorized representative, meaning they could go make application for me, they could go make changes for me, they could go use my EBT card wherever they wanted. And some of these things are things we have talked to FNS about. I have. Brandon's been with me through administration after administration. But that's one thing. The next thing is only allow an individual to be an authorized representative for 2 cases. That's like I could go through some low-income housing project and I could go try to sign up every elderly person in there. So I could be an authorized rep for 50 different clients out there. That doesn't seem right if you're real concerned about fraud. The next one would be allow or encourage retailers to check ID. Right now, they're not supposed to check ID necessarily. Ellie, speak up if you know something different than I do. Also, allow or encourage retailers to report suspected fraud. In 2016, a letter went out to states saying that because prior to that, if a person had been in there with 3 or more EBT cards, swiping them for benefits, retailers were allowed and encouraged to call and report it as suspected fraud. In that 2016 letter, I pulled it yesterday and looked at it again. It said that went away. So you could stand there and swipe 25 cards, and retailers really aren't encouraged to call in about suspected fraud.
That's one where it shouldn't be allowed, it should be required.
I agree.
I agree 100% with Leader Lee on that. We shouldn't let them have skin in the game too. If they don't check that ID and that person is defrauded from their store, they get penalized. I think
Very, very much like selling alcohol to underage people.
We agree completely.
Yeah. Put some teeth in it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's something that's doable, but I do want to point out a case that we have in our store. First of all, we've always been taught that we are not supposed to point out somebody that's on assistance benefits, right? We're supposed to treat everybody equally. We don't want that person to be singled out in the grocery line because they're using any kind of benefit. And that's one reason that the ID wasn't done initially. Secondly, you might have grandma who is sick, right, and is at home, and she has a grandchild that then goes to the store and uses her card for her to get her groceries. So that's a situation where, here again, we have it ID'd because obviously the ID of the grandchild or the child is not going to match grandma who's home who's sick. So I think that that's something just to think about. I don't think that we're opposed to doing an ID, but I think there's going to have to be something, like we were talking about the authorized people, that have to, and then we'll have to figure that out at the register. And remember, too, people at the register, these are a lot of times 16, 17-year-old kids. So we have to think about that and work through that as well.
Yeah, but grandma can bring her, or can give her ID to the grandson, and if he scams her, she's going to find out pretty soon that she doesn't have any more benefits that month.
But in that situation, it's really not those cases, honestly, that are the issue in those situations. It's really, we hear from a lot of stores, and I was telling Ellie and Jimmy this not too long ago, a lot of stores still deal with it, and it's mostly about the first 2 bullets, that people are coming there with multiple cards and swiping them. And those are the issues we want to get to. Mm-hmm. It's not the little mom and pop situation, but the situation where individuals got a situation where they're swiping multiple cards, or they're coming in there with cards they should not have authorized.
But that Bessemer store that's been prosecuted or will be prosecuted for $5 or $10 million, I can't remember, fraud. That guy's not checking IDs. That's the guy you want to put in jail, not the grandmom.
Exactly, and I think in that situation, if you're using, there could be a rule. You can't use more than 1 card or 2 cards or whatever, and we would absolutely apply to that.
Okay, give us those solutions so we can give them about just what you said there.
Like I said,
I like
all
that.
of these are things that are within food assistance administration's control. And they've done it this way for years, or they had something stronger and they reduced it and they didn't go back and add it in after, like I said, we've talked to various administrations that it should be added in because we're big on fraud. If somebody's due food assistance, we want them to get it. If they're not, then they don't need to get it. If they got it, we're going to do our best to get it back if we know about it. So we also have pushed allowing states, if states choose to do it, to certify your smaller retailers out there, not your big box stores and all that, but we know our convenience stores a lot better than somebody from another state coming in trying to certify them. Years ago, we had several situations. We don't have them now, but we knew they were not doing that much food assistance business. There was other things going on there. And, you know, when you call to report it to folks out of state that are doing the certification, they really don't have time because they're swamped with so many other things. So we've also asked for that. We also would like to see F&S require vendors to accept the TAP. I told Brandon to call you and make sure you knew that we were recommending that because that's the safest thing to use. And so we got the chip, which helped a lot, but we'd like to be able to do the TAP, and we'd like for all vendors to be able to accept it that way if you're going to be certified to accept EBT cards. Then we would also like to encourage states to discontinue the magnetic strip on the EBT cards because that's where that creates a lot of fraud because that, I can't talk technologically, but I think the information is saved in that machine, and that's how they got a lot of our information was from the use of those magnetic strips on those EBT cards, on those other ones. So if you'd like to talk about the fraud some, Brandon is a wealth of knowledge too. So, but this is just a quick list we did on our heads real quickly that F&S could change if people are really worried about fraud. And like I say, the reason we put it out there is because that's what comes up when you talk about states having to put their share in and the error rates. It's about fraud. And it's really not about fraud when you're talking about error rates. Fraud's something totally different. Fraud is a very small piece of it. But like I said, it's about 1%. I don't even think it can make it to 2% in what we've looked at around here. So,
And ultimately, the Commissioner did an excellent job. I think it's very important to point out that none of these affect your payment error rate. Right? So when people think that this stuff affects payment error rate and they think the payment error rate is fraud. And these are measures that F&S could take, or F&A, I'm sorry, they changed the name on June 1st. The F&A can take immediately through regulations. These are the main areas that we see most of the fraud that we deal with in. It's not certification fraud. It's mostly folks trying to game the system and be authorized reps in too many cases or traffic benefits or something of that nature. It's not someone that misrepresented their income for month 3 in their certification, and that's what quality control called an error on. They didn't mean to do that. It just happened that they went over the 130% of the federal poverty level. So, and there's one on here I want to make sure we come back to, and this is one the Commissioner and I actually had a waiver on for many years, is that requiring individuals to come in also when they have for their second replacement card. We had that waiver for several years during the prior Trump administration, and in 2023 they actually took that waiver away, and now they can get up to 5 cards before they have to come in.
That's like somebody says, I lost my card. And that's how the reason we want them to come in is because they're hit on a lot. Like, sell me your card, I'll give you 50 cents on the dollar or something. So a lot of the lost cards have to do with situations like that. Some of them don't. They're legitimate, but there should be a reason to have to come into the office. Now, if somebody can't get into the office, I had a lady out in North Alabama not long ago. I think a legislator was calling me about her. She needed somebody to come to her house. We have staff. We send people to the house to help them get their food situation worked out. So that's not a problem. And like I say, to say that states can't decide or they're not going to approve a waiver or whatever, they just ought to make it a flat rule that after pick a number. If you don't want to do 2, do 3, but at least don't give them to 5 before they have to show their face and look across from you and look in the eyes and say, oh yeah, I lost my card or so-and-so stole my card. Because first thing we're going to ask is, did you report it to the police if they stole your card? So we think that's important. Were you going to say something, Ellie?
Yeah, I just was going to say that retailers have really gone. You got to remember there are organized crime things that go around the country that go into stores and their POS systems and steal these cards. So it's not just for SNAP benefits or whatever. It's all credit cards. It's all payments. We've recommended to our retailers that they check their POS systems 2 to 3 times a day. Okay, because these rings are coming around to make sure that they haven't put something on the POS system or inserted something. Now there's stickers on the POS system so you can see if somebody's lifted something off. It's really, really a problem, and it's an organized retail theft problem. And so we are trying to do everything we can through computer systems, through checking our POS, through all these things to try to make sure that our stores aren't targeted.
And I can't say enough about the partnership that we have with the grocery stores on this chipped card situation and the Convenience Store Association. They did a great job of upgrading everything. And again, this bill was passed with the theft that was going on at the time, which was skimming and cloning. Everybody thought that would be fixed by your payment error rate, and they were just apples and oranges.
Yeah. That was great. And I'm going to turn it over to our leaders here and see if they have any questions, and then I'll ask any the committee to ask questions. But let me just say, DHR is the solution, not the problem in Alabama. They have, again, been the best. We've done the best job in the last 3 years of any southern state, and all we're asking for is treat us equally.
Obviously, I don't do this every day, so I may be asking a crazy question. But these items here, would this be something you would ask the feds for a waiver on? These type things?
I'd ask the feds to change their policy on it.
Yeah. Is that even a possibility for us to have a waiver on this? In other words, we can't control this at the state level, any of these items here, correct? So it would have to be a waiver that you would ask for. Obviously, I think you'd carry more weight if we had support of the legislature to show that we support this. But that's what you're looking at doing. Is that what the end goal is?
Well, like I say, we would like to encourage them, like when you're talking to somebody, like the person I was talking to the other day, they represent Alabama. They had no idea this is how part of it is written. And so when they want to talk about fraud, so there's a lot of fraud that FNA could correct if they would just change some of their policies for states.
Okay.
I mean, this coming in about these cards and how many times, if you put that across the nation, there's no telling how many millions of dollars that would change. And on these authorized reps also. Brandon, did you want to?
Are there other Medicaid agencies across the state that are on the same page that we are? Sounds like there should be.
Well, we could help get them there.
Okay.
But like I said, we do a lot of things trying to track fraud. We have a lot of electronic things that we do. Brandon and his folks do a great job at doing that. And, putting information out to our clients. We have a lot of help from our advocates in doing that and telling them what to do and what not to do. And that's part of it. And I also want to mention some states that are working on their error rates, which we're working on ours. But we didn't have any extra money to work on ours, and I'm not here begging for money because I think we can do it. But like some states hired 100 more workers to try to do oversight. Some states, we checked one contract that's looking at helping states. That contract was $10 or $15 million to do that. So, like I said, we just didn't have time to really start this. Plus, I don't think you should count client errors, and we sent a waiver up there about that, and it was denied to only count agency errors that we make, that our people make. But that one got denied.
How are we doing, Nancy, on agency error rates that quote our fault? Are those coming down?
They're not down yet. We're expecting them to see a drop more the latter part of the year because of what we put in place, things that we put in place to check and double check on those. So I'm anxious to see the latter part of this fiscal year how much they actually drop down. because it's tough. It's like moving an iceberg
Yeah.
when you're thinking about that many thousand cases. Now, food assistance numbers are coming down because of some policies they changed about ABODs and people having to go to work that are 60 years old, not 65, and things like that. Brandon, what are we down to now?
Yeah, I mean, we've lost almost 40-something thousand cases in the last, since October, right?
I think
Yeah.
Would you repeat that?
40,000.
40,000 cases since October.
That's great.
So, they're doing some things because, like I say, there's part of the push that's been going on for 15 or more years that just really doesn't like SNAP benefits out there. Did the policy get too loose with letting some people get them and not making them go to work? Probably. But this is, you don't correct it by just wiping out the whole thing. So.
Right. Jeff, anything?
The EBT cards is kind of something that I want to focus on right quick because who sets is it 5 cards before you have to show back up?
Yeah, that's actually in the federal statute, so we can't waive that statute, but we did have a waiver at one point regarding that piece of it, but they came back and said that we couldn't waive the statute on that.
Okay, is the federal government actually the ones that are clearing those benefits? When I swipe that card, tell me how that benefit is recorded.
Okay, so that's a complicated question, but I'm going to try to explain it to you. So you got a situation where we actually we draw down the money. Our vendor draws down the money for us, and then it comes back to us, and then we draw it down and pay the vendor all in an overnight process. So when I say I'm issuing $1,000 onto a card, it really does not go through the process until it's spent.
Let me just say, we have very few cards we issue $1,000 on. That's
Yeah.
a big number. It's more like less than 500. So,
Okay.
but it's loaded overnight. So everything that's certified for Alabama is not put in anywhere in Alabama. The Fed's loaded every night through our system, the way the system works, on how much was expended that day. So it's all done electronically.
So if the state of Alabama is fixing to have to inject money into this program, what's to prevent us from looking at reducing that? I mean, it sounds like if I've got skin in the game, I should be able to have an impact on that kind of.
And that's what we hope with federal I want to also say that they have not released any guidance on this measure yet. And absent of any federal guidance, there's only 3 current options available to us, and that is either pay the cost share if we're over 6%, get the rate under 6%, or end the program. Now, if federal guidance changes that, we'll be the first ones to come back and let you know that guidance changed. But they still have not released that guidance, and states need to know what the guidance is going to be in regards to that. But at this point in time, we would have to create an account with the cost share money in that account, and that would draw down every night our percentage of whatever the benefit was. And at this point, we have not been told that we can reduce the program or cut the eligibility standards for the program.
But the Thrifty Food Plan
is in the code.
So they would have to amend something, I believe, in order for FNA to allow a state to reduce it if you're going to have a USDA SNAP program. Does that make sense?
So you are tracking the drawdown of individual monies. So
our financial people deal with that every day.
Okay, if I go swipe that card and it shows that does the transaction show up under my name for that card on a daily basis?
It does.
Okay.
That's how we were tracking how much was actually, we
Being
couldn't do
spent
it daily, but being spent in other states. Most of them were up on the northeast coast, so to speak. New York, Massachusetts was a big one for us, Pennsylvania, some of those states. And that's when we reported it to the feds, like over a year before they helped do anything. And so the last meeting I talked about, I called the Secret Service, and they were working with us, but they couldn't find the IP address either on where all that, but they had a much larger investigation going on apparently because of that in New York. So somebody, I think Dr. Thrasher, you mentioned it was affecting other states. Stan Landers was just at an NGA meeting in New Orleans recently, and that was one of the hot topics of that meeting too, with other states talking about the SNAP and how in the world states are going to pay for it.
If it's not a hot topic, it will be.
It will, when it goes away, yes, or somebody's trying to figure out how to fund it and doesn't have
It would seem to me, what you told us is the big emphasis, as we've known, needs to come from a national level for our senators, but hopefully they can get with some of the other senators in what I call the good states, not the Minnesotas who are doing wrong, and reach out to Washington and say, hey, these are things we think we can do. We need your help. The bottom line, we got to have 2 years of reprieve, or we're in bad shape.
We agree completely.
Any more questions from Paul or Jeff?
I do. At what point, you're talking about, and it sounds like you've got it worked out, but at what point, when you see the same card being used in New York, how long do you let that happen and say, well, they're not a resident of Alabama. Why are we letting this continue on? I mean, who knows that?
Yeah, we actually rework that report every week. And we look back to see whether or not they filed an application or a recertification and how long those transactions have actually been going on in New York. And if it's just for 1 day or 2 days or a week, then we just let it rock along. But if it becomes a situation where it's prolonged, then we're sending a notice out to that case and asking them to come into the office. And if they don't, then we close the case.
Okay.
See, what happened when we saw all that, EBT cards used to go out. You can spend it in any state. We changed that. EBT cards go out, and you can only use it in Alabama, and you have to go on your phone and opt in to what state. So that's what helped so much, because nobody was putting New York on their cards anymore, or Pennsylvania or Massachusetts. And so that's what shut so much of that down when we changed that.
Yeah,
we did press releases and explained, and Alabama Rise helped us explain to our clients too, and all of that. So that went a long way curtailing that type of fraud.
Let me ask you a question, Nancy. Can we, maybe it's a national law again, can we say that we're going to pay for our citizens in Alabama and Alabama businesses only? Is that legal?
No, it has to have interoperability across the country. That's currently what's in the law. And you got to understand, a lot of our clients that are at least on the bordering part of the state, like Columbus, a lot of them shop. Phoenix City. I'm sorry.
That's a good point. Well, maybe I would phrase it different. Maybe within 300 miles of Alabama, something like that.
But what we've done is we've cut off those cards are automatically opted out of transactions in those states, and the client has to make that choice. And we still monitor those states, but we monitor the states outside of the four that touch us. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4 that touch us. We monitor those states weekly. And I'm just going to say this. I'm very proud of this statistic. From skimming in Pennsylvania in April of 2025, they were skimming about $2.5 million a month from us. And after we implemented all the chip card and the policies that we have with the out-of-state, we've seen months as low as $2,000 spent in Pennsylvania.
And we could actually have a client that went up there.
But we track them. Yeah, we
track them. And when they do it and they need to use their card, they need to turn it on and turn it back off. Is what they need to do. So.
Okay. Yes.
And I would suspect over the next several years we'll see states being able to have more control if there's a cost share involved in it and there's more skin in the game from the state perspective. But at this point in time, there is nothing been sent to us to tell us what that potentially could be.
Okay. If there's no more questions from there, I'll very quickly ask, is there a question from the committee before we move on to Jimmy Wright?
We're going to have to take on, our administrative costs right now on the program is 25%. And the Fed, that's going to be changing, correct, to
50.
No.
To 50.
So it's 50-50 right now, and it's going to be 75-25.
Okay.
Which, yeah.
Okay. So when we take on that burden, that additional burden of administrative costs, you're saying to me that the federal government won't necessarily give us any more power over the program.
What I'm saying is that currently we do not have anything saying that we have any more power over that over the program.
Even though we're taking on additional administrative burden.
I do hope that we get more control over that piece of it through either regulation or law that might change. But at this point, what's available to us is still the same program that was available to us under the 50-50 program.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee? If not, I want to thank y'all again. I ask y'all too, if you'll give us a bullet points that we can bounce off our legislative leaders here in Alabama to get with our senators, to hopefully get with a coalition of senators, at least in the South, to present this to the federal government to try to enact some of the things that we all sitting here today realize would really help us. Thanks again. I'm going to turn right to Jimmy Wright, and his we have 3 committees going to report today, and Jimmy's is one that's is probably going to carry more weight in the legislature than any other ones. Jimmy?
Sure. Well, good morning. Thank everybody for the opportunity to be here, and our Thrasher, Carolyn, for your leadership, and for our elected officials, thank you for your leadership in our state. This is a tough issue here that we're going to deal with. I'm going to divide my presentation into 2 parts today. We're going to talk about the SNAP issue and then change gears a little bit and talk about food nutrition policy thoughts for the state going forward. Our initial charge in these committees was the legislative longevity and the life expectancy in Alabama. So I'm going to spend some time on that one also. I want to thank all our subcommittee members. They have been absolutely a fabulous group to work with. I hope that we have the opportunity to continue on our work. We have such bright minds in there from the health world, and just thankful for these folks and all their input and everything that we have worked on. All right, so our committee, I think, has seen most of this, where some of our folks here may not. So this is the impact of the grocery community in Alabama. As you can see, it's broken down by congressional districts, almost 190,000 employees. We got payroll of $6 billion. We got sales tax of $1.5 billion and $18 billion in total economic activity, which includes the supply chain and all the things that move through our state, our farmers and everything else. So you see that we have a big impact on the economy in the state of Alabama. Again, some of the areas that we touch, certainly we're an integral part of the health of Alabama. We want to talk about that. We bring our families together. Food is our history. Food is our heritage. It is just needless to say, just a huge component of our lives in all aspects. And then we touch every community in the state. All right, so we'll move now into the effects of the SNAP program on Alabama grocery stores. Many of our stores run between 20 to 40% of their retail sales will come through the SNAP program. We have stores as high as 60% of that in some of our densely populated low-income areas. Our industry works off of an extremely low profit margin, somewhere between 1 to 1.5% profit. So we are a penny business, and every sale counts. Any loss of volume today hurts in any shape, form, or fashion. If you look at something like a 10% loss, that would have an effect on our stores with the margins we have. If we look at the loss of the SNAP business, then that would be very difficult to overcome. Even if you had 40% and your business dropped 20% because of the SNAP program going away, in our margins in our world that is extremely difficult to overcome. And we see this much more prevalent in the rural areas of Alabama. Okay? And we'll talk about that. So rural communities, there are usually only one grocery store. Besides my retail store, I also do some work around the country on food access. I have another career that I help communities that don't have grocery stores get grocery stores. In Alabama right now, we have Thomaston I'm working with, City of Thomaston, and I met last week with the City of Uniontown. And so trying to bring some stores back in these rural communities. But as I look against the concerns of the SNAP program, it is very concerning on how I can make these stores work in these communities if this is kind of looming over our heads, so to speak. A lot of dollar stores in Alabama, but they are not the issue. The solution, though, I got the wrong slide. There we go. So they are not the solution for fresh foods. They made some stab at that, but not a whole lot. SNAP again can be much higher in the rural and urban than in the urban areas. And the risk of stores closing will greatly increase food deserts, food insecurity, and lack of healthy foods, which is what brings us to the media today. Okay. Affected on convenience stores, 3,600 convenience stores, about 60,000 people. You see the breakdown in fuel and merchandise and food service and the taxes generated by them. So they're selling some food out of those things also. Same as the grocery stores, we will see a reduction in sales volume. In many rural towns, all they have is a convenience store. You've got some new USDA stocking standards where they're having to increase the variety of products they carry, food products for the SNAP program. Again, if that goes away, these people have all this product, and it's going to be difficult for them to sell that. We're seeing that in the convenience world, as these things move toward on SNAP, that many of these guys are going to walk away from the SNAP program. In areas where their only solution for food, they just see it as too much trouble, and they're going to try to survive on other products that they sell. Our farmers markets had great success in farmers market. I'm going to give Alicia Powers and Hunger Solution Institute folks and all our farmers market people. Farmers markets can now accept SNAP benefits. It's an important part of revenue if you attend one of the markets in the area. Last time I was up at Pepper Place up there, a lot of people in there shopping with that. I'll talk some about the Alabama Double Up Food Bucks program. That is a nutrition incentive program which allows the SNAP user to get 50% off of the purchase of fresh fruits and vegetables. Once again, grocery stores, convenience stores, or farmers markets, this is going to hit them also. So we touch every bit of the retail world and the supply chain that is all behind us. Okay. A great slide that our health professionals put together here that shows if we go into SNAP benefits, we fall into poor nutrition, all the health medical complications for that. This is not going to be good for our state when we're begin this process looking at the overall health and wellness of Alabama and the challenges that we have, especially as it relates to life expectancy on there. All right, so that was a fast run through those, and most of you have already seen it. So let's talk about where we are today. As Brandon and Commissioner Buckner have already shared, we are looking at this issue with these error rates and getting it below 6%. A few examples there, we're at 8.3, Florida 15.13, Georgia 15.65, Tennessee 9.47, and national average of 10.93. So we're under those. I had told Sheriff Brandon that we're getting punished for them being so good. So the bad guys get 2 years, and we have just a little bit of time to turn this around, and that's kind of baffling to me, to be honest with you. Error rate, again, we talked about this. Clients missing reporting requirements, administrative issues, whatever. With this, they talked about staffing and things like that. So that's where our error rate is, and we certainly are committed to helping any way we can. Again, 9 states, Georgia and Florida, our neighbors, plus the District of Columbia, have until 2029 to reduce their error rates. these states fell into what is called the Alaska carve-out, which is where Lisa Murkowski sold her vote to get a pass on SNAP benefits. She sold her vote to pass the big, beautiful bill there. You know, not gossiping, that actually on record there. So, again, we have to 2027 before the big hit comes to us, and the big number on the bottom. You know, if it cost sharing increases, we're looking anywhere from $80 to $261 million in funding to keep the SNAP program going. And I know with our elected officials here, coming out of the budget is, so that would be something that we just don't need to visit on there. You know, again, SNAP serves as economic engine. It drives jobs, supply chain, all the people that work for us. You know, if you've got a store that's 30% in SNAP benefits and it goes away, now we've lost the 70% that was not SNAP and a tax revenue coming from that side of the stores there. So even with SNAP, we drive a tremendous amount of tax benefits for our state. This has been proven again and again and again. Multiple studies that $1 in SNAP benefits generates out $1.50 to $1.80 in economic activity. It's hard pressed to find a government program, federal government program that makes that return. It's immediate consumption, so we're spending in our stores, they move through our communities, and again, just a reduction or termination in program will have a tremendously negative effect on everything from the farmers to the plate and everybody in the middle of that. The potential, again, reduction, retail sales going down, absence of grocery stores, creating more food deserts, loss of tax dollars from the non-SNAP sales, and then all the effects on our supply chain. Again, those are the main points. All right, I'll spend a little time here. So this is a map. If you all got it, this is a map that Ellie Taylor, Alabama Grocers Association, put together, and she has done a fabulous job on this. But we looked at the low access census tracts in our state and rural communities. We looked at the stores that we knew were in a high density SNAP area, and a large portion of their sales were through that. We identified we have 752 stores in Alabama that are grocery stores that Ellie looked at. Like 337 of those that we believe will be impacted if this program goes away. There's 117 stores on that list that we believe would be at the real possibility of having a tough time surviving. Okay, 61% of those are low income, low access census tracts. 68% of those in rural communities. Bear with me for just a minute and let me tell a little personal story, and I think maybe this will kind of drive home. So my little store in Opelika started out as a convenience store in 1973. It's 2,100 square feet. It's about 22,000 now. When our store opened, my dad built it, and he and my mother and I ran it for this guy. When our store opened, Opelika was anchored by the textile mills, like much of Alabama. And so as a kid working in that store at 12 years old at that time, all these people would come in from the mill. They were just covered in dust and all the stuff that comes out of the mills, and you all are aware about all the stuff down there. But those are the hardest working people. And they took such pride in what they did, the products they produce, but they struggled. Mills never paid a lot. And as a kid, that set in something in me. And that's a real reason I'm here today. I spent my whole life in our store serving people like that. 40% of my business is in SNAP. Opelika's got a robust economy, but we still have a segment of people that are struggling to make it ends meet. We see people today working two jobs, more people today working two jobs we've ever seen before in my life. Everything's high. Inflation numbers this morning up 4.2% in inflation. You guys are all aware of that. But we've always opened our doors, and no matter who you were, where you came from, or the payment that you made, We treated you with respect and dignity, and that is why 40% of my sales come through the SNAP program. We do not treat these people any different than anybody else out there. I say all that to share with you that one of these 117 stores on this list is mine. It's going to be tough to make it if we lose this program. And I shared with the committee this week, I don't want this to be a woe is me moment or anything like that. It is what it is. Again, when we opened in 1973, the A&P was there. I remember them. Big Apple and Winn-Dixie, and A&P and Big Apple went. So Winn-Dixie was still in town. We've had people come and go. Kroger came in 1979. Walmart came in the late 70s with their first store. Recent years, we've had Aldi and some other folks like that. Winn-Dixie closed a few months ago. My little store is now the longest standing store in Opelika, Alabama. Now, I wish I could tell you that was due to superior management. And tell you that I believe that God has blessed us by we do the right thing and take care of everybody that comes through the door, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what money they spend. If this is a path that goes down, things happen in life. It's hard to think that after all these years, my business could close or my career could come to an end based on a policy change in Washington, D.C. And like I say, that's the personal story I will share. What happens in all this? I was talking to Mayor Eddie Smith last week. Even in booming economies, and things are off the charts, you build a hotel, somebody's got to clean the room. You build a restaurant, somebody's got to wash the dishes. Those jobs are never going to be $25 and $30 an hour jobs. These people work hard. And the SNAP program is what they use to close the gap. I see it every day. Are there people doing the wrong thing? Yes. Do we want them out of the system? Absolutely. I won't use profanity, but absolutely so. We want them out of there. We want our program to be efficient. We're all taxpaying citizens, but for God's sakes, we cannot let this program get away from us and the people that are working so hard, and this is how they make it every single week. So this is not an Alabama issue. This is what the cards we have been dealt. And I'm thankful for all the folks that are here and the leadership we have, and we'll talk about some ways to address that. People will say, well, if the SNAP program goes away, Jimmy, they'll still eat. Yeah. They'll eat less. They'll eat worse. The food banks will be covered up, and the food banks are supported by the grocery stores and churches and things like that. But how long is that sustainable there? I think you'll see the SNAP customer, there'll be a whole lot of cereal and a whole lot of ramen noodles out there in that. So that's the story where we are. Again, this is our ask. This is where we are as far as what we've got to make our ask of our leaders in Washington, particularly Senator Tuberville and Senator Britt, as they go in negotiations on the Farm Bill. So that is the story of the economic impact in our state. That's the story of what we are facing, and this gentleman would be where we ask for your support, and we are here to help you in any way to address that. So I'll take some questions on that part of my presentation.
Yeah, Jimmy, thank you for a lot of hard work you've done, and it's a really big deal for the state. I'm going to turn over to our leaders at the table for questions first. Yep. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there a question from the committee?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Nancy. Yes, you are now. Dave?
Yes, sir. The ask on the screen is ask the federal government to give Alabama a 2-year delay. And I presume other states too, like 30 other states that also face a 2008 fiscal year deadline instead of 2030, and 6 states are less than 6%. But anyway, have we made the ask?
I'm sorry, have you what?
Have we made the ask already? Have we sent?
Oh, yes.
We have sent a letter.
Oh, yes, and personally talked to them.
What have we done, please?
What have we done? I've talked with Dr. Senator Tuberville and Senator Britt's office Monday as well as before, and they are very much aware of the problems we have here. We're going, after this committee finishes up today, we're going to put this in a nutshell and talk to them further about some of the ideas that have been presented here today, Dave. Thanks, Brittany. Brittany is a face of medicine in rural Alabama. She's a superstar. She sees what we're talking about here, firsthand. And we're number 2 in the nation per capita in diabetes. It's going to get worse. And one good thing that the legislature has done is taken as I call it, the crap food out of SNAP benefits, some of the candy and the sodas and things like that. There are things we can do to make it better, but if we're not successful in getting this change, healthcare is going to deteriorate, crime is going to get worse, and maternal health are going to get worse. The speaker charged me with 3 things: crime, nutrition, and maternal health. And we're focusing right now on nutrition, but a big part of what we want to do is get the obesity rate down. But then this is taking a preference right now. So, Brittany, thank you for your comments. Other Brittany, do you have a question? Oh, I'm just scratching your head. Okay. Any other questions for Jimmy?
Nope. I'll move on to the other part if you're ready.
Thank you very much. And Brittany, we're back to you.
I got one more part.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. I thought you. Excuse me. I apologize. This isn't my day job. You can tell.
If I got fired on the first part, I mean, All right. So we're gonna move on now real quick, and these are some basic thoughts that we have on the Food and Nutrition Initiative. Again, this is where our work started several months ago. And so I'll run through these. So if you look at SNAP being part of that, we've got all the discussions this morning. Strong and Efficient Nutrition Assistance Program. Again, he always gets embarrassed when I say something like this, but I will tell you that I would go to war with Brandon Hardin. So just to let you know that we are there, and Ellie Taylor and I will help him. Ellie, I just volunteered you, so I hope you know that. So we are here in any shape, form, or fashion from Alabama Grocers to help Brandon and Commissioner Buckner have the best program we can do. Fraud, whatever we need to do. Again, on the nutrition side, we got the SNAP restrictions coming up no longer than April next year. Protect and modernize the SNAP program. Now, again, we're out in front of this with the chip cards. I'll give you a real quick story. Came back from lunch one day, had 2 guys coming out of my store. And they went separate directions. And just after all these years of being there, you just kind of know if something's wrong. And so I went in, I walked across the front end, and it looked like somebody had done something on one of my swipe pads, one of my terminals. So closed off the lane, went inside, went in the office, pulled up the security footage. This guy came through, and while his partner was all getting my cashier bumfuzzled, out of one pocket, he pulls off my pen pad. In the other pocket, he put his on. It took him 3 seconds to do that. They go outside, and the technology people tell me they have to get within 100 feet to be able to activate something on Bluetooth. That's all above my pay grade there. But I found it, went inside, saw that, closed the lane off, and fortunately stopped that, or God knows what would have happened at a 40% snap store with somebody else's pen pad at my register out there. I spent $8,900 to buy 5 pen pads with all the new whiz-bang security and stuff in it to protect myself. So Alabama grocers are making an investment in this process to make this SNAP program safe. And again, from my perspective, when I see fraud and I read the news and stuff, it infuriates me from the standpoint that I know the people who could use more. And now it's going to some crook somewhere or something. And so we are committed to anything we can do, again, to help DHR. Error rates and then senior programs, expanding those. Again, I come out of an area where seniors, sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge to them to get them to sign up for a nutrition program. They just were coming in the world where you didn't ask for help, but they're struggling, and we are happy to help any way we can on that. Healthy Food Financing Initiative. This is one that's already in effect in Alabama that's been here for a bit, and then we also, Auburn University Hunger Solution Institute has the Delta Healthy Food Financing Initiative that we can work in Alabama with. But a permanent state program, we have talked about, again, these are just thoughts. We have talked about a revolving loan fund for these stores. I mean, I'm seeing this in Thomaston, I'm seeing this in Uniontown, that those stores to get reopened are going to need some work in some way for the operator to get a low interest loan and some favorable financing so we can bring stores like that back. But it would be a loan fund. Right now, the regional councils of governments like Lee Russell over my way have a revolving loan funds for stuff. So there's a mechanism in place. We'd love to explore that. Expanded access in food deserts, rural and independent grocers. Our guys, and I say our guys, the independents, are the ones that are in the Thomasons and Union Towns and the places like that. The current HFFI program in Alabama, I think the maximum may be $50,000. It may be down to $25,000 now. But those are things that help with some of the smaller stores and mobile markets. Teresa and UAB have got a really robust mobile market program. And we're always looking for a way to create workforce development jobs, and things that we can get people through the pipeline in our industry and get them to a job level where they can make a living and be sustainable for their family. Alabama Agriculture and Supply Chains. We are very fortunate, again, to have our Department of Agriculture, Sweet Grown Alabama. Blake's here from representing our farmers. And so Farm to Market Networks, Friday of this week, Friday this week, I am in West Alabama at the Deep South Farm Alliance and some other groups over there. In a couple of weeks, I'm up at Millard Dairy. So working with Alabama Department of Agriculture to get out and see what our farmers need. How do we do a better job of connecting our farmers to our retailers and what's in the middle of that? So we're working on that. Any kind of local procurement incentives, a lot of USDA money out there. See a lot of farmers now that would like to enter retail, their own farm stand or something. Regional aggregation hubs, one of the challenges in getting produce to the stores is just the logistics of that. I think Teresa and her group, they're working on some stuff that's been successful there. And as always, we want to get more Alabama grown foods in our schools, in our stores, are our goal there. Last one would be nutrition, health, economic development. There is a program, and again, this is something we can dive in much, much deeper another time. There is a program from the USDA called Produce Prescription, where a physician can write a prescription for fresh produce like they would write a prescription for some medicine. It has to be funded by USDA grant. Alicia and I, we tried this with UAB a few years ago and did not get the grant. The money's not that big right now, but that continues to be a movement as this food as medicine movement continues to grow. And I would suggest that as part of our overall nutrition strategy, that we look into that. In Alabama already, we've got the Double Up Food Bucks program, which is a 50% off of fresh produce. Healthy Fluid Milk Initiative. Auburn is managing both of those. Working on any kind of community kitchens, workforce development, school nutrition partnerships. And my last comment was that, again, food is not a charity. It is a tool for economic development and critical to the health and wellness of our state. I think, hopefully the information that we have shared today shows the economic impact, the implications when we have good food, the implications when we don't have good food, and how we use that again throughout our whole state. So that is a quick run through with some thoughts there, and I will be happy to answer any questions.
Jimmy, several people asked me, explain the Double Up Food Bucks. Will you explain that?
Sure. So the grant's also actually called the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program. Gus Schumacher was the guy who kind of came up with this. But in Alabama, it's under the marketing of Double Up Food Bucks. And so Auburn University Hunger Solutions Institute applied for a grant, and this is second round that we've had of that. Their recent award's $2.5 million. Right now, we have it in 4 grocery stores in Alabama and 9 farmers markets. But the way it works is that a retailer would sign up with Auburn to do this. And so I'll give you an example from my world. So Auburn has the funding. I handle the transactions at store level. So customer comes through, they shop. We've identified all the eligible items for that program. It's only fresh produce is all they can get. So they come through, I swipe the SNAP card. It triggers the items that are eligible and gives them a 50% discount coupon that they can come back on the next visit. But it's all for produce over there. So that I submit at the end of the month, I submit all the disbursements I've given to Hunger Solution Institute, and I'm reimbursed back from that grant. And they are fabulous at running this. Their back office and the way Auburn handles it is great. USDA grant goes to an entity like Auburn, into a retailer like me. In the $2.5 million, we will move to how many grocery stores?
We're going to go into about 11
grocery stores.
Most of them in rural areas. We've also expanded to farm stands and to mobile markets.
Yep. And working with Auburn too, trying to be very strategic around the state. We certainly have areas that need it, but we just don't want to put everything on air. So we're trying to look at, do we have somebody in Northeast Alabama? Do we have somebody in Northwest Alabama, in Birmingham, or whatever? So even though it may be a smaller number of stores, we are trying to plant a program out there where it can get to everybody in the state, coupled with the farmers markets.
Thank you, Jimmy.
To make on that is for every dollar we get from USDA, we have to have $1 in match funds. The state did provide about $1 million in a previous year. I think it was 2024 to help with that match. So that was tremendous. But for that $2.6 million we received, we have to find another $2.6 million to be able to use it.
Thanks, Alicia.
And I'll give you an example. I guess I don't eat ramen noodles, but I sure do use them as an example all the time. So, SNAP customer comes to my store, and broccoli is $2 a bunch, and ramen noodles are $5 for $1. Decision they're going to make. With this program, now broccoli's $1. They can move away from that and move into a fresh item and be a healthy diet for their family.
Okay, great. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, now, Brittany, it's your turn.
All right, y'all teed me up really nicely, so thank you for that. I have a handout that's in the packet that y'all received, and that's what I'm going to speak off of. They're going to get it up on the screen for us too, but to not hold off, since y'all have it in your packet, I'll go ahead and get started with our summary so that I can lay the foundation for where our solutions. On our last meeting, I talked a little bit about the challenge at hand and what we would face in the senior population without SNAP, the kind of coverage that SNAP had, the food resources that we already have for seniors in Alabama, the program specifically SNAP served towards seniors. So, can I get that clicker from Jimmy?
Need a clicker. We can't do things without.
Thank you.
Passing the baton.
Oh, are there not two? I'm going to talk from the first one, the other one first. There's only two. That's the one. All right. So the challenge we face is if SNAP isn't available, there's reduced availability of healthy food, which Dr. Anderson already mentioned. And in my previous presentation, we talked about how SNAP benefits play a role in decreasing out-of-pocket expenses for food for seniors, enable them to make better choices toward their health care treatments. So if there's no SNAP, there's reduced adherence to prescribed medications and medical care, leading to unmanaged diseases and increased health care expenses. That puts an increased burden on our healthcare system, and a lot of the time that's happening with Medicaid expenses. So what that looks like is, speaking of the seniors, the example that Jimmy gave in his market, that's the kind of person that would typically, if they're not currently on Medicaid, they probably qualify. They've got Medicare. That senior is in a tenuous situation, right? They're in their home. They're making it as best as they can. And they're typically a hospital visit, a fall, a pressure wound, something that can be exacerbated by food insecurity from a long-term care facility. Most seniors would prefer to stay in their home, but sometimes after a fall, those things that poor nutrition can exacerbate, they end up going into those skilled nursing facilities. Skilled nursing facilities, seniors, we tend to pay for Medicaid about, I think it was $10,000 per member for seniors, and that's all on the state's dollars. So if they were in their home, they may or may not be utilizing that Medicaid at that level, but once that incident occurs, they do. So there's a higher increased cost onto the state. We talked a little about diabetes in Alabama and the role that it plays, and we were able to get some real-time data of the average cost there. Average inpatient hospital admission, so let's take that senior for example. They're staying in their home. You know, they've lost track of their doctor's appointments. They've made some choices to skip some insulin treatment, some diabetes pills, some hypertension medications because it just was a little too expensive and chose to choose some food over that, spend that money on food that month. Now they're in the hospital. A hospital inpatient admission is $8,500. An emergency room visit on average is $420. An average outpatient visit is only $90. But we've put, not we, but the situation at hand, if SNAP is removed and that food assistance, we're going further and further down that road. That increases cost on the state. So the solutions that we've come up with for our committee, the primary issue is that we want to address the food insecurity because the food insecurity leads to malnutrition. The malnutrition leads to increased healthcare and community expenses. So our solutions are increase funding to existing feeding programs, provide medically tailored meals for at-risk seniors or meal kits or groceries, and bring awareness to food donation organizations. So now you can go to the other slide that I had. So this one, it shows a little bit more in detail how poor nutrition, 15% of seniors are currently food insecure. Brandon talked about the ones that seniors in particular that were receiving SNAP benefits between 60 and 65 that are now required to meet the able-bodied work requirements or volunteer requirements, they're currently been removed off the program. That's 21,000 people, 21,000 seniors that are currently experiencing increasing food insecurity. So that's a vulnerable population that we have not addressed at this point. This is what we're talking about here is going to be compounded if SNAP is removed.
Let me interrupt you a bit. For the sake of our legislature, would you define the people who are no longer on the rolls, the change in the requirements, explain to them and us what those requirements are now?
Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong, Brandon and Commissioner Buckner, but that was a change in the One Big Beautiful Bill. Previously, there was the ASAP program within Alabama that allowed for seniors 60 and older to have a simplified application for SNAP. It allowed for medical deductions from their gross income. It expanded the coverage. Jimmy talked a little bit about awareness of SNAP benefits. They have contracts with our area agencies on aging throughout the state that we work with them to get seniors enrolled in those programs at the congregate facilities or the senior centers throughout the state of Alabama. That changed with that bill, and it means that seniors between 60 and 65 have to meet work requirements or volunteer requirements. I believe, is it 80 hours a month?
Yes, so 20 hours a week.
20 hours a week, 80 hours a month. To my knowledge...
Unless they're disabled or something?
Unless they...
So these are people who, younger than me, are required to work if they're able, right?
Yes. So
I don't have a problem with that.
The caveat there is, I work for the Department of Senior Services now. I'm the nutrition director. Prior to this, I worked in dialysis facilities. The process of it's very easy to get disability, I suppose, if you're on dialysis, but it's a bit of a tenuous process. So there's a lot of seniors who would probably meet requirements for Medicaid. There's a lot of seniors who meet requirements for disability, but they may not have gone through the process because it's tedious. They might have gotten denied before. There's a bit of a dance there, right? They may not have had family support. They may not have had transportation to get all those things done. So I don't know that it's fair to say that the seniors that we're talking about are all not necessarily they're not necessarily not disabled. They could be disabled. They may just not have gotten that criteria. Is that fair to say, Brandon?
Nancy, turn your thing.
Sorry. Part of the problem you're dealing with when you're dealing with the lower socioeconomic level, a lot of them didn't know how to get a job.
Right.
So they're 60 to 65.
But they can volunteer. 20 hours of volunteer, correct?
Yes, sir, but they don't know. They don't have the network. They don't have the connections to do that. And a lot of these seniors only came on during COVID because maybe they only get $40 a month, which didn't mean that much to them prior to COVID.
Mm-hmm.
So they do and get the $45. What's the average payment? About $45 or something? 50? Yeah, it's less than $50 now. But that will make some of those copays. So to go off SNAP, what you're in effect doing is they're going to have some medications they're not going to spend. They don't have the money to spend on that. So that's what I think she's talking about. You're going to get a double whammy from it. Either pay here or you're going to pay a lot more over here. So.
Okay, there's probably not somebody with a more bleeding heart than me in this meeting today, but I strongly believe if you can are physically able to work or volunteer, well, we need volunteers everywhere. That is a group that, unless I'm misunderstanding this, I'm not really for putting them back on the rolls. If we get somebody to let them volunteer, whatever.
And Dr. Thrasher, just from my experience with that population, many of them already probably were on disability, so when they get screened through the process, they'll continue their SNAP. They'll continue on the SNAP, but it'll take a 3-month process. But many of them are underdiagnosed. They don't have the ability to go in or haven't gone in to get any of those diagnoses. So you're dealing with folks that may have a disability or some type of impairment. Most of the folks that I'm dealing with, though, in that situation are individuals that don't have any kind of transportation.
Yeah.
And to get transportation, we may have somebody living in Sylacauga, Alabama, my hometown, and they need to be a physician in Birmingham. Well, when I was working out in the field, it took 25, and that's been more than 20 years ago. It took, back in those days, it took $25 to get you to Birmingham to pay your neighbor or somebody. Now you need about $75, and it may have gone up with gas too.
Yeah.
So it's just, there's lots of other things that play in here other than, I mean, I have a job.
I get that, and I appreciate that. And you said 20,000 kicked off. Is that what you said?
21,000.
21,000 kicked off.
We want to use the language of 21,000 are no longer eligible for the ESAP project, and they have to go back into the regular program and be screened for the ABOD work requirements. In those situations, and just to put it in perspective, those 21,000 are now working themselves through our system for the next 3 months. And our applications in the regular program are up several thousand. There was a point that we were up almost 8,000 more applications in the last month because of this change. And you're talking about the administrative burden that goes along with that. And many of those individuals have already utilized their 3 months for ABOD work requirements, so they're no longer eligible unless they go back and they regain their eligibility. The issue is that there's just nothing that's plugging that gap for those individuals, and that's the biggest. Those folks will end up probably at the food bank. And then our staff will work with them on being able to meet those work requirements in that age range. It's just a lot of those, what we've seen in most of our rural counties is those individuals will just no longer be eligible, and they won't be able to meet that work requirement because they don't have access to.
It sounds like DHR do everything we can. My only thought is 21,000. If I don't want to minimize it, but if all they have to do is do some volunteer work, let's get the churches, United Way involved in helping those people learn how to volunteer. Because if they're physically able to work or volunteer, I'm not sure I want the state to pay for it, to be perfectly honest with you. And I'm a very soft-hearted folk. Don't get me, I'm not just throw me in jail let them die, you know.
And I'm just going to say this too: the ones that are 62, most of them are taking early Social Security benefits, so they're probably not, unfortunately, not going to go back to work because they would potentially lose their benefit.
Yeah, I'm not even asking to work. I'm asking to volunteer, pick up trash, just do what the requirement says. Maybe I'm being too hard. I'll turn it over to my wife.
You're not.
If I may, I don't think there's ever a time to reset. I'll give you an example. In 2010, when we came in, the state of Alabama was broke. And we had to do tremendous cuts. We had to reset the whole process. We changed the whole way we did budgeting. And because of what we did and did that reset then is why we're at where we are in the state of Alabama today. So the reset you're talking about, yeah, it's a pain. You have no idea how big of a pain it is when you do away with the drop program. And the lady at the library says I was one day away from getting all that money. But guess what? At the end of the day, the state of Alabama is better off because of that big reset. And the reset that you're talking about is what they're having to do, and it's not pretty.
Right.
It's not pretty.
I think the whole point Brittany was trying to make was all of these things have happened, and as they happen, it takes more staff at DHR to do the denials. It takes more staff at the line at the health clinic because they're not taking their medicine now. I mean, that was it. We're not advocating one way or the other, whether it should be, but we're just telling you what all is happening out there to other entities, and it's costing all of us more money to deal with this. So.
Right. Yeah, I'm not fussing y'all at all, Nancy, but we've got to find, assuming we're not going to get this 2-year delay, we're going to have to do everything we can to make the system as good for as many people as we can. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yes, my primary point in saying that is we want to keep there are things that we're fixing and that we're trying to make sustainable long term, but we got to know what we're losing in the process. While we're concerned about longevity of our communities and lifespan, we've got 21,000 people who logistics and systems and transportation and barriers may be a problem. Whatever the in between is, we do have increase in food insecurity, which these are going to be the results of. And that's going to land at our door. That's going to land at Medicaid expenditures. That's going to land at healthcare costs. That's going to land at rural hospitals. So that's what I was primarily pointing out there. So the solutions we were kind of focused on trying to come up with were ways that we could utilize a multiplier effect of federal funds for state funds. Our first idea was increasing funding for current programs. One of the programs we're talking about is the Elderly Nutrition Program. That's the program that I administer through the Department of Senior Services that does the congregate meals and homebound meals throughout the state in conjunction with the area agencies on aging. So expanding state funding there would allow us to be able to serve more participants, and we've got some numbers on that. If we were just to try to absorb 10% of seniors that are more on SNAP, the total cost there to add on about 12,000 participants per year would be about $17 million. The funding formula is a bit complex. I worked with our people at Fiscal at ADSS to see exactly what that would look like, but it's broken down by the different area agencies on aging. Some have more money to absorb some of that, so it's difficult to say exactly how much of that would be federal and state. I couldn't say that plainly, so I didn't want to say that number. But I do want to point out, it would be a substantially lower amount. I have it, if we were just to try and absorb the 21,000 that were removed, that's a lot more. And I have it broken down that I can provide, but to give you context about how far that could go. And that program has the capability, those funds can be used for groceries, for meal kits, for frozen meals, to address some of the functional limitations of seniors. The next one focuses in on the Medicaid program and Medicaid participants, specifically for elderly and disabled seniors that are already enrolled. And that would be a Food is Medicine Medicaid demonstration waiver pilot program specifically for Dallas County, Morgan County, and Houston counties. Our idea there is that we have some statistics that talk about the population specifically for Dallas County and Houston County. 28.5% of the population in Dallas County in 2024 was over 60, and 25.5% of their population is over 60. 29.6% of those over 60 had SNAP benefits for Dallas County, and 11.9% had SNAP benefits for 2024 in Houston County. And for Dallas County, 24.5% are below 100% of the poverty level. In Houston County, 12.6% are below 100% of the poverty level. We use that to give us an indication about how many people we would be serving to get an idea of how much this would cost. For all three counties, that looks like about 15,000 people based off some fiscal year 21 data that we found from Medicaid. What that would look like would be potentially around between $4 million for an option of either prepared food, so a frozen meal or a meal kit or grocery or some type that we could customize. This kind of waiver is already being done within the Medicaid department for not for Food as Medicine, but they are in the process. They have these waivers already, so we know that they know how to execute them. Our other options were to increase awareness to the Deer Share program in Alabama that hunters provide to food banks throughout the state. The program that's currently in place is called Hunters for the Hungry, and do donations for those similar options, and of course, protect SNAP as best as we can. Those were the solutions that we came up with.
That's great, Brittany. Any questions from the leaders? If not, any questions from the committee? I know we're tight on time. I believe we're getting us out on time. So, Casey, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to share an update from our committee. One thing that has been made clear through our process is that SNAP is not simply a nutrition assistance program. It serves as a foundational support system that influences child health, educational outcomes, family stability, local economics, agriculture, and community well-being throughout Alabama. I've provided several flyers. I don't have a slide or anything. One flyer is an update from our last session. It has a good bit of statistics related to, the impacts of H.R. 1, the Big Beautiful Bill, on children and programs related to children. I'll mostly be working from this infographic that says Protecting Alabama Children from Impacts of SNAP Reductions. But basically, we all know Alabama children are already at risk. I would dare say that everyone in this room, your daily work probably has something to do with trying to improve outcomes for children and families, as well as leaders across the state. Those are issues we deal with every single day and try to find solutions for. But Alabama's children are at risk already, and we're trying to solve that problem. But these changes to SNAP have great potential to interfere with action we're trying to take to improve those outcomes, and that's of great concern, especially related. You see the areas of risk that are on the infographic: food insecurity, economic security, maternal and infant health, education and school readiness, health and access to care, and housing stability. Those are data points from Voices for Alabama's Children 2025. But SNAP is more than a food program. SNAP serves as a critical connection point for multiple systems that support children and families. For families, children, and seniors being the most vulnerable, SNAP provides resources to purchase food and reduce household food insecurity. For schools, SNAP participation supports direct certification and eligibility for school meal programs. For healthcare systems, SNAP supports improved nutrition and health outcomes. For farmers, SNAP helps create demand for locally produced foods. For grocery stores and rural communities, SNAP dollars generate economic activity and support food access. When SNAP participation changes, those effects extend far beyond the individual household receiving benefits. If SNAP shrinks, every system feels it. During our discussions, we developed a simple framework to describe the ripple effects of SNAP reductions. Families lose food access, families lose nutrition, schools may lose community eligibility provision or CEP eligibility, food banks become overwhelmed, farmers lose markets, stores lose customers and revenues, communities lose access to food and economic activity. And, these impacts do not occur individually. They compound one another and create challenges across multiple sectors simultaneously. And that's of great concern. So our group came together with 5, kind of categories of recommendations. But one thing we know is that food banks cannot replace SNAP benefits. They play a critical role in addressing hunger. They do a very good job at that, but they cannot replace SNAP. For every 1 meal provided through food banks, SNAP provides approximately 9 meals. There's no way to bridge that gap with food banks. Food banks already face significant capacity constraints, including limited donations, storage limitations, transportation costs, staffing constraints, distribution challenges. They are designed to supplement SNAP, not to replace it. So any significant reduction in SNAP participation would place substantial pressure on charitable food systems that are already serving increasing number of families. And I would dare say, and I know, I've confirmed, food banks are already facing challenges in decreased resources and facing the need that's already there. We know that food insecurity is an issue for Alabamians. We know it's an issue for families. We know it's an issue for children. In Elmore County, we served 7,200 kids the other night, just over 135,000 meals. We've got families that line up throughout the summer for hours in lines to get great packs of, kits of food. We've been able to extend that to 11 other districts throughout the state, so we're able to serve about 21,000 kids statewide, and there's a greater demand for that. So there is a great need. So as far as recommendations, if you look on really kind of the back side of this infographic where it says 5 recommendations to protect Alabama children, the first is related to school meals. And school meals are one of the most effective tools to combat child hunger and improve educational outcome. There are actually programs available to serve children in schools, breakfast, lunch, and supper. Changes to SNAP affect eligibility to programs. and the data that's used. It affects direct cert rates, which again affects eligibility to programs like community eligibility provision. So in a district such as Montgomery, where many of the schools have almost 100% free reduced rate, with changes to SNAP and direct certification, you could cause districts such as Montgomery to have to go back to families completing a free reduced application for every single child. Right now, they don't have to complete any free reduced applications, so it completely shifts the administrative burden of those programs. In Elmore County, we're able to participate in CEP right now. With changes that we're seeing in direct cert rates currently, 2 years from now, that's not going to be an option for us. So there's several areas in terms of state action with school meals that could possibly help in these areas, specifically related to breakfast funding. We're very thankful for $7.3 million that has been budgeted for breakfast funding last year and this upcoming year. When districts participate in community eligibility provision, meaning students are able to receive meals at no charge, for some districts, like Elmore County, there's a funding gap. We participate, but we do not receive as much funding per meal as, say, a district like Montgomery that does have a higher free reduced rate. So that breakfast funding has bridged that funding gap, and it's made us, better able to participate in those programs. With decreases in direct cert, you're going to see greater funding gaps for those types of programs. But if this breakfast funding can become permanent, that can help make it possible that even as direct cert rates decrease, districts may be able to continue community eligibility provision because there's other funding available. If it is expanded to, and this was an ask some of you may have heard this year, to $14 million, it actually makes breakfast at no charge available to every student in Alabama. I know we've been asked, why would you give breakfast or give a meal to a child whose family can afford it? No one says why you give transportation to school to a family who affords it. But unless the basic needs of children are met, true learning cannot occur in a classroom. And we know that no matter what the socioeconomic status is of a family, a good majority of kids come to school not being nourished, even if they have an abundance of food in their home. Even if they have a high family income, they may not have an abundance of food in their home. So just because they drive a fancy car, they may still have food insecurity issues. And this is one of the best ways that we can directly prepare students for learning in the classroom and make what we've worked to accomplish so much with academic initiatives through the State Department of Education. We're seeing success with that. We're seeing improved outcomes. I think we've all seen how we're now comparing to other states where Alabama is outshining in terms of, performance in academics. We don't want to see declines in that related to nutrition, but it is very possible. So breakfast funding especially, and that will help with those gaps with community eligibility provision. The second category, and this is one Andrew Carter with Senior Service and Senior Services and Lita Chatham with Public Health pointed out, and that's improved access to TANF. TANF is a federal state program that provides temporary financial assistance and support services to very low-income families with children. The goal is to help families meet basic needs, stabilize during periods of hardship, and move towards self-sufficiency. Unlike some SNAP provisions we've discussed, many TANF policy decisions can be made at the state level. And Alabama does, my understanding, have flexibility in determining eligibility standards, benefit levels, and how TANF funds are utilized. I believe there are TANF funds that are underutilized at times, may stay on the table each year. So if we could reassess, it's an area of study to determine if we could change some of those eligibility standards or benefit levels to better utilize those funds. So I do think it's an area that would be very, very beneficial to look at and would help bridge some of those gaps as we see declining SNAP benefits in Alabama. Number 3, streamline WIC enrollment. I do believe this is an area also that needs additional study and exploration. The committee recommends exploring opportunities to streamline enrollment in WIC, possibly coordinating eligibility between Medicaid and WIC, expanding automatic referrals, but working to reduce administrative barriers for participation. Then number 4, farm to school. This last year, I believe the funding amount for the Farm to School incentive, that incentive provides for an additional 20 cents reimbursement for a food that is served in a school meal. So the funding, I believe, was around $600,000 this year. I believe that's what's been approved for next year. This year is the first year that all of those funds were utilized. So Alabama Department of Ag and Industries has done a phenomenal job providing support to school districts and farmers, working to bridge relationships between the two. You know, in Elmore County, before this program, we served 0 servings of local produce in our schools. This program has provided $400,000 plus to Elmore County, and that's over 2 million servings of Alabama produce it's helped to serve. It would be greatly beneficial to schools, to children, their nutrition, and to farmers to increase this funding and possibly look at grant opportunities, even with that funding, to increase infrastructure and capacity for school districts to do this and for farmers to do this. A lot of times it's kind of the middle of the supply chain issues of getting food to where it needs to be that has to be addressed. The Department of Ag has worked to address those issues, but it is an area that could be of great benefit, not just to children, their nutrition, but also to farmers. And then the fifth is just to protect SNAP access and administration, what we've all been discussing. In closing, our subcommittee's findings point to a simple but important conclusion. The issue before is not solely about SNAP. It's about Alabama children, Alabama seniors, Alabama families. It's about whether they have access to nutritious food. It's about whether students are able to start the school day ready to learn. It's about maternal and infant health. It's about family stability. It's about farmers, local businesses, and rural communities. The impacts of SNAP reduction would not occur in isolation. They would ripple across multiple systems that support Alabama families. While Alabama cannot control every aspect of federal policy, policymakers can strengthen the programs that protect children, support families, improve health outcomes, and strengthen communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Casey. Leaders, if you have any question from the children's part? Well, that was perfect. We have 30 seconds left. Any quick question from the committee? If not, we will get back with you. I'm sorry, Dave or Jimmy, one of you?
Just a thought in listening to the health side of things. I like Representative Lee's comment about reset. I think that's where we are as a state right now, is the SNAP program was surfaced there, all the issues of health and everything else. So I think about it from perspective, and not only do we ask for this delay, we ask for this delay, and this is what we're going to do in that period of time. And I think this is, the Bible teaches us sometimes out of tough stuff, good things come out of it. And that's kind of the focus I want to move forward in. We know what the lay of the land is, and let's go from here. I travel the country. This is the only state in America that is having this discussion. Trust me. I hear from all the grocery associations all over the land. So again, we're out in front of this. We've got great leadership at the state. Let's get, if we can get the senators on board, work with the governor. But I think this is a great opportunity to move our state forward in all aspects.
Thank you. And I want, before I let Nancy close, I want to say what a great job that Nancy and the legislature's doing. We don't realize a family of four with no income will get about $35,000 to $55,000 a year in benefits. Okay, I was watching a thing last night on Teddy Roosevelt when he became president in 1900. What America was like then, all these children working these god-awful factories. We've come a long way. Okay, we have a long way to go, but these guys are not the problem. Nancy's certainly not the problem. We've got to give them, like you said, Jimmy, we want a 2-year reprieve, and if you'll give us this is what we're going to do. So, Nancy, you want to close us?
I just want to make a comment. Your committee that talked about TANF, we run the TANF program. And food banks are wonderful, but I don't know if y'all realize it. We gave them $9 million this year in TANF money, which is a lot to offset with churches and whatever. They do a great job. But TANF money is not as much as it used to be in this state either, and it dwindles down some.
Right.
And almost half the people that receive TANF are grandparents raising grandchildren on that TANF money now too. So it is, but it's used for a lot of different things. Sometimes it gets earmarked for certain things too. Just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention too.
Sure.
All right. So, and I just think y'all are doing a phenomenal job. But I'm telling you, there is no greater work than what you're doing right now, trying to figure out how to keep lower socioeconomic people in Alabama from going hungry, from dying from starvation. Some of your elderly people will. Some of the children, we have children all the time that are classified failure to thrive. I know the doctor knows exactly what I'm talking about. And sometimes it's because of lack of nutrition. And I just don't think Alabama wants to turn into that kind of state.
You're right.
Thank you. Thanks for the work.
Like I said, we're not trying to save the Snell daughter. We're not going to debate the pronouns. We're trying to save lives here. Melanie?
Yes. Real quickly, I'll just take 10 seconds. I wanted to point out the 2 flyers that I gave y'all. Woven into this entire conversation is oral health. People with bad oral health cannot receive proper nutrition, and many physicians cannot treat diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and even hip replacements have to be a clear oral health. So the Oral Health Coalition of Alabama wants to start that conversation, and we are having a seminar on November 6th talking about integrating oral health into total health and possible solutions, because when you have emergency room visits with someone with a bad abscess, that increases healthcare costs. And we just want to begin that conversation. I've also included a letter of fluoridation support. That's one of the easiest public health initiatives that has helped the public health and oral health of all citizens of all states. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me, Melody Anderson Jones, 04@gmail.com, and that's my 10 seconds.
I would not be surprised, may I interject, watch closely, because I would not be surprised if someone doesn't try to come through legislature this year trying to stop the fluoride.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir. Thank you.
We've got to, that's crazy.
I would love to be involved in that.
Don't get me started on crazies.
So anyway,
it's a good time for me to pass the health committee over to Representative Soros, because I'm afraid there are a lot of crazy stuff.
Please reach out to us. We are more than happy to help, and come to the seminar. And I think it will really, it's for everyone, all citizens of Alabama, legislators, healthcare, everybody who's concerned about the health of Alabama. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, everybody. This is true of the A-team. I appreciate it. Y'all the experts. I'm certainly not. You've done a magnificent job. We're not done. We're not done by any long stretch of imagination. Thank you, and you'll be hearing from us soon.
Okay, and I just want to thank everybody again. So from here, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a report for the legislature and for the speaker on all of the meetings we've had around SNAP. I'm looking forward to getting input from the committee on our next topic, because y'all, we're still here, and we're going to be here for about a year. So we will be changing topics starting in August. So we're going to close up. Everybody will have an opportunity to input. We certainly will take all this information from the last 3 meetings and then prepare a report.
Real quick on that, I've been working with Eli Lilly. We're number 3 in the nation in obesity per capita. 75% of Alabama is either obese or overweight. Our diabetes is out of control. We got some ideas. We're going to work with some rural counties on that. I think the legislature is going to be real happy with. And that's what this committee was supposed to be working on right now, until we got hijacked from SNAP. We'll get back with you. Thank you.